Well, I am excited that we are getting to talk about leading a community chaplains training class. And so the time that we have, if you're watching this on video, or for those of you who are here with us today, is to focus on how we can step forward to lead the community chaplains training. And the reason that excites me so much is because we are multiplying ministry. Now think about those two words, multiplying ministry. They're M and M, right? And my favorite candy I actually brought up here with me today, M&Ms. All right, because M&M's always, it's my favorite candy, but it also reminds me of one of my favorite things that I like to do in life, and that's to multiply ministry. And so if you're watching this video or if you're here with us in this training session today, it's going to be just a very short few minutes that we're going to spend training. But I'm excited because you are stepping forward. And you're stepping forward to facilitate, and you're stepping forward in a leadership role to share with others things that you have learned. You know, we think about the passage of Scripture, and I would encourage you as a leader to focus on the contents of page 5 in your coach's guide. Because if you're stepping forward, you have moved from having a community chaplain's care guide to having a community chaplain coach's guide. And in your coach's guide, page 5 lays out the framework for what you want to do because we're multiplying ministry. Perhaps you have participated in a community chaplain's training class before. And you've been through it, and you've been active in serving, and now God's calling you to say, hey, I want to step forward and lead and teach. Maybe you're watching this video and you're actually facilitating a group both as a participant for the first time and as a leader. I'd encourage you that you can do either one of those things and recognize that there's teacher tips and there's coaches' guides throughout this study to help you prepare and be ready. And so let's work through page 5 of our coaches' guide material so that as a training point you can be looking at and watching and thinking on the part that God would have you play in igniting a Christ-centered caregiving chaplain movement. Because you see, that's what we really want to do. 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 2 is our key passage of Scripture that I would encourage you with and challenge you with as you begin thinking about leading this group. The verse is 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 2, and it says, "And the things that you have heard from me among many witnesses, commit these to faithful men who will be able to teach others also." And you know, we've learned these truths, we've learned these ideas about community chaplaincy, and if you're stepping forward to lead the group, what you're really wanting to do is these same truths that you've learned and things that you've put into action, you want to commit these to faithful people who will also be able to teach others also. I like to tell this little story, this little joke. Coffee machines in workplaces have become so complicated to work, sometimes we don't even know how to fix a simple cup of coffee. If you looked at Flavium machines or the different kind of coffee machines, and so oftentimes we will have people in the workplace and they're trying to, you can walk up on them and see them trying to prepare a simple cup of coffee for themselves. And they're not sure which button to hit or where the little packet of coffee goes. And it's amazing what happens if you're the person that knows how to make the coffee. If you can just come up there and show them, this is the button you push, this is where you put the coffee, this is where the packet goes, this is where the cup sits. What a difference it makes. They're thankful because what are they wanting? They're wanting a cup of coffee. And you're the person that's teaching them how to make that cup of coffee. And I use that simple little illustration to say, you know that most of us, right in here, we have a desire to want to care for people. When we watch somebody going through a crisis or a need, we have a desire to want to help them and to want to care for them. But maybe sometimes we don't know exactly what to do, or we don't know exactly how to do it, or we're afraid that we'll say the wrong thing. And if you've been through community chaplains training, you get the opportunity now to put into action 2 Timothy 2, the things you've heard, the things you've learned, the ways that you've been ministering. You get to multiply ministry. You get to multiply yourselves. Remember the pack of M&Ms. We get to multiply ministry. We're committing those truths to faithful men who will be able to teach others also. And so here are the things as you're preparing to lead the group that I would encourage you to do. I would encourage you to read each session many, many times before your group session so that you are thoroughly saturated in the contents. And you see these tips for leading the community chaplains training on page 5 in your coach's guide. But read the session material in advance of your group meeting, and not just once, but saturate yourself in it. Read it several times through, 2, 3, 4 times. Perhaps take the class once or twice through your church or through your small group so that you've got a real thorough understanding of the materials. Oftentimes we'll get encouragement and we'll get feedback from participants of the class where they're learning things that are so helpful to them. And we like to tell the joke that the way we learn these things is just to make enough mistakes enough times and you learn what not to do. And so realize that you're reading the session, you're wanting to get to know things. Number 2, invest time making notes as you read. So write down things, ideas that you want to share, stories that it reminds you of, areas or ways that you've been able to care for people, areas and ways that other people have cared for you. And so make notes and take notes as you work through the material, as you read through the materials, so that you're prepared and ready to facilitate the discussion. Now, I use 2 key words there, facilitate the discussion. And you may watch the training on video, but what we really want the training to be is a facilitated discussion. And so your care guide that your participants will work their way through, it's really a facilitated discussion guide. They'll be reading the material themselves before the class, and what you will be doing is facilitating a discussion about the content through the weekly sessions together. All right, so you're investing time to make those notes so that you can facilitate that discussion and encourage participation. Teacher tips, number 3. Teacher tips are provided throughout the session to guide you in the process of facilitating the group meeting time. Rely on these teacher tips. They are ways to help you generate conversation and discussion among your participants. They give you questions that we would suggest that you ask. If you have a marker board in your class, use that marker board to write those notes up on as people give you feedback and get some conversation going among your participants about the mission statement itself. Get conversation going about the materials from that particular week and how they've lived out the mission in their community. And so encourage your group to be familiar with those teacher tips and encourage conversation and facilitated discussion. Be sure that you as the coach, as the leader, as the teacher, listen to the designated audio training disc each week in advance of your meeting so that you can be familiar with what's on the disc and be familiar with what your participants are going to be listening to. So be ready for those sessions and be familiar with the contents of the audio disc. And then finally, and perhaps most importantly, each week, week by week, pray. Pray for your participants. Pray as you read the materials. Pray as you read through the contents, and pray as your participants, as your students read through it, so that when they come to class, they're ready. And the Spirit of God is showing up and joining you for the facilitated discussion. Again, I'm excited, thrilled that we get to multiply ministry. Thank you for taking time to step forward and lead community chaplains training in your church.